So, why are you here? For me, I never want to be a podcaster, but I feel like there's a vacancy out there, particularly for my fringe passions. The top three for me are moto, snowmobiling, particularly backcountry, and archery. So I want to breathe life into some of those. So we're starting a new series under the Better Questions of like extreme fringe enthusiasts. So you're my second in this category. But what I adore you for is you took something like you did what everybody dreams of, right? You took a passion and you made a business out of it. And like, so for those of the people that are listening that don't know you, right, you're like one of, if not the biggest, brand ambassadors. I don't even know how you classify yourself. So, in the backcountry snowmobiling space. So, from me to you, like I've done a lot in business not related to sports. I'm much more jealous of the path that you took. So, I think your story is just an inspiration. I don't know how many of these you've done before. I haven't seen any of them. So, you want to just take us from birth to today, like the story of you and the story of Boondock, just like as you would hit the highlight reel?
The snowmobile industry is something that's near and dear to me. The community, I like to call it, rather than an industry, because it's just full of great, like-minded people, and that's one thing that I never realized when I started snowmobiling. And my friends and I, we were getting together as we became teenagers, and we started riding together, and we started creating content before social media influencers were really a thing. Or
what year?
Brands were just kind of getting their feet wet.
For the Gen Zers, how old are you? Where are we? I think you're a Midwest guy, right? Wisconsin. When you start your content tour, what year approximately would you say?
So I'm in northern Wisconsin. I'm 27, and we started doing this like my junior year of high school. So I was 16, 17. So that was 10 years ago. And that's about 2014, circa 2014. Yeah. So that was back when you couldn't, like, all Instagram posts were square. You couldn't post video on Instagram, back in the olden days. And we were just sharing our stuff out there.
Yeah.
We had no idea where this would go, but we just wanted to share stuff with our friends. We saw other brands starting to do the same thing, other riders in the industry that we only knew of through like sled films. I want to get into how that's really progressed and how you can get sponsored today versus 10 years ago. But we'll get into that later, I guess. But that's where my story begins is, just as a teenager, riding with my friends, doing our thing. And then we began to develop a business around it through just the basics of social media and digital marketing that we picked up along the way. My business partner, Dylan, his dad was very instrumental in helping us put together a business plan based on, his existing businesses. He has a TV series called Discover Wisconsin. He kind of showed us how they make money through making broadcast TV shows and digital content. So we adopted some things from that business model. We applied it to the snowmobile industry and just went to the trade shows, shook hands, met people, rather than just making a cold call or reaching out through social media or whatever. We tried to put a face behind our name, and we felt it was really important to go to the events. That's one thing I can't stress enough is all the social events and networking events that happen in the industry. There's a lot of the decision makers for these companies that are there. So we went and talked the talk and then figured out how to walk the walk. We weren't good riders in the beginning by any means, but I think we had a cool story just being from the Midwest, beginning to travel out west. Most snowmobilers are located in the Midwest. It's the heart of the industry. There's more snowmobilers in Wisconsin than all the Western states combined. And the same goes for Minnesota and Michigan. Like, this is really where all the registered snowmobilers are. So I think we took that passion that exists here and did what everybody wants to do, whether they can do it or will ever do it or not. I think it's really fascinating, the mountain riding and the Western travel and content. Everybody has some sort of desire for the mountains, I think, in their soul. So we kind of tap into that. And with our Midwest roots, I think it's a pretty cool tie and a unique thing in the industry.
Dude, I don't know. It's like the sickness. It's like the two things I love more than sex. But maybe there's a few, but like snowmobiling and business, it's so cool. I get like chills just listening to you. But like, I don't know if that's appropriate, but it's the truth. So my assumption is people hear that story and they don't hear about the pain, right? You 20 to 14, I think the commonly held belief would be like you just started shooting some film, going to trade shows, and then got lucky, right? That's like the woeful like mistake of many. And so like, can we talk about like when the name is born? Like I'm assuming, and also I want to do just a little bit more about like Jack. Like I know Dylan and you are like really the life and the company, but like in 2014 we pull out the camera, start shooting content. Like I'm assuming at that point it's whimsical, but like what kind of student was Jack? Did you end up going to college? Did you skip college? And like what I'm really interested in is when you said F it, like I'm not just kind of doing this, I'm gonna do this. And then also like how long between start that point and like, hey, we did something here. I think something would be like you actually built a business where you could survive, maybe not thrive. Like I just want to talk through the whole, like the entrepreneurial journey of what you built. Cause like, I don't just say this to gas you up so I get a chance to ride with you more. I truly believe it's like inspirational. Like for a lot of people, like you put money and passion without losing passion. And that's so hard to do, man. And I think it's awesome. So take us through that journey.
Yeah, thank you. So definitely an interesting time in my life, and for anyone's life. I feel like in hindsight, a lot fewer people really know what they want to do out of high school than it seems at the time. I also feel like we're in a transitional time too, where it's always been pushed. You need to go to college to get a good job. You need, go get a STEM career or a STEM degree, science, technology, engineering, and math. And that was my wheelhouse too. I was an A student all throughout school. I did well with academics. I did well with athletics too. So I played football in high school. I was a quarterback. I was on the golf team, ran some indoor track. Winter, didn't do any sports because I was snowmobiling and skiing all the time. And that I always knew that was really like my passion. I'd be training in the weight room, not necessarily for football, but so my legs were stronger to go skiing, and to ride sleds and stuff like that. So as I was preparing to leave high school, I really only wanted to go to one school, and that was Michigan Tech, Michigan Technological University in Houghton, Michigan. So that's in the heart of the Keweenaw Peninsula. And the main reason I wanted to go there is because they had a sledheads club, and you could ride, like go ride some of the stuff that we were just getting our feet wet in when we were seniors in high school, juniors in high school, and got our driver's licenses, and we're driving up. I'm from Land O'Lakes, which is right on the border of Wisconsin and the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. So that's about an hour and a half drive for us. So we were just getting to know this area, and I was fascinated by it. I loved the riding up there and the amount of snow that they got. So that was the main reason I chose to go to Michigan Tech. And then with my ACT score, I also got a pretty good academic scholarship that they offer for out-of-state students because the tuition is pretty high there. I don't know what it is now, but all said and done, it was about 43 grand a year for me at the time. So scholarship definitely helped, but I was still going to come out of there and, 100 grand in debt probably when all was said and done. So I went to Michigan Tech. I was really keen on Boondock Nation at this time. So a lot of time that I probably should have been studying, I was coming up with different ideas for the business and making content, making graphics and stuff like that. And then these were some of the first trade shows that we went to were that fall of my freshman year. So I was leaving school on, Wednesday night and traveling to Novi, Michigan or Milwaukee to go set up for this weekend trade show. And then trying to keep up with my schoolwork, going to office hours to work with my professors and try and get back on track. So that was a bit of a challenge, but it was eye-opening for me too. It's like, man, I really don't care much for the stuff that I'm learning. in school right now. And I don't know if I want to just go be an engineer for the rest of my life. I think my entire idea was that I would go do that until I paid off my debt and saved up enough money to start my own business. So eventually I switched my major to a business major, engineering management, which was basically a mechanical engineering degree with a couple of business courses. And that I think that was kind of the first indication of where I wanted to go. My parents were self-employed most of their lives. I think that's always been a dream of mine, is to own my own business and tap into that entrepreneurial spirit. So when the opportunity with Boondock Nation just became more and more real, when we started to get some traction through that first year and we were selling sponsorships and stuff, I thought, this is my opportunity to kind of skip the middleman. I wasn't getting any help with funding for college, aside from my scholarships. And I decided, I don't want to come out of here $100,000 in debt just to have to go do something that I'm not really sure that I want to do. So that's why I chose to leave Michigan Tech after a year and go to community college and just get like a business degree with a concentration in marketing. So through that time, I already had some AP credits from high school and some credits from Michigan Tech. And it was easy for me to get through that in a year. But the entire time, I was still just focused on Boondock, as much as I could. I was thinking about snowmobiling all year round. So I guess when you ask about pain and you ask about, the struggles of it, that was definitely a very difficult time for me because, all my parents wanted was for me to go to college. I'm an only child. My dad went to college. My mom didn't. I think they just were really happy that I was going to this good school. Michigan Tech was ranked in like top 10 in the country for starting salary placement out of college. And again, this is right at that kind of transitional time. I think the tone has really changed in the last 10 years with the amount of information that's available online and other ways to educate yourself, where college has become less of a necessity for a lot of people. I think for certain fields and certain people, it's the best choice. But for me, I never felt that way. So that was really tough to tell my parents that I was going to leave school and leave Michigan Tech after, not being there for all that long, and that I wanted to go to community college, and there's some stigma around that as well. So that was really tough. But at the same time, I felt really confident in what we were doing and that it had legs and that we were going to be able to make a career out of snowmobiling, which to the average person just sounds crazy. But I had seen how the community had embraced us. I had seen the early success that we had. I still had no idea, like in hindsight, what this would turn into. But I was confident enough to make that jump. And that was quite the leap of faith at the time. So there were some ups and downs through that. And that was probably the first test or trial that I had in like, do I really want this? And the answer still remains, yes, I really want this.
I'm glad you said it, but I anticipated like no revolutionary really survives first contact, and first contact typically comes at home, right? So I have to imagine, unknowingly and unintentionally, your parents were just shitting on Boondock all along the way, or were they pretty supportive? Like I can imagine if I was doing what you were doing, it'd be like, your grades are suffering, you're leaving, an esteemed institution to go to community school. Like I'm assuming they were not, or can you like, how supportive or anti-supportive were they? Not to dog your parents. The natural thing would be to worry about you trying to build a snowmobile business that's like got very little to no odds of success.
Right. Yeah. I think they were highly concerned at the time. But they were always supportive. They never let me see that. I shouldn't say never, but I never really felt that, or maybe I just wasn't paying attention to it as much or didn't want to hear it. But my dad's always been my biggest fan. So I think that speaks a lot to them. And, they've affirmed that over the years too, that they're so glad that I've carved out my own path and have gone the route that I did. And how much I've learned along the way too. My gosh. I mean, in those 4 years I would have been in school, I was on the road, I was meeting people, I was actually doing the dance, and I learned so much along the way of how to conduct myself, how to maintain relationships, how to start new ones, and how to grow a business from the ground up. So yeah, when stoked on all that I've learned. And I always said along the way, like, even if everything with Boondock Nation went away tomorrow, I've still got that everything that I've learned along the way, and that's going to set me up for success with whatever I choose to do in the future.
Well, I think the real hero is Mr. and Mrs. Sarama, because my parents I would have been in a lot of trouble doing what you did. So that's awesome. That's super cool. All right. So 2014, you guys are in high school. You start shooting content. 2017, you're in school, and I cut you off. So you have dropped out from Michigan Tech to community school, and take us from there.
Yeah. So this is about when we started taking more and more trips out west, and that really started to grow the brand. As we're shooting sexier content, we're becoming better riders. We're linking up with some of the bigger names in the industry. We're getting more sponsors on board. And the discussion was, I think we need to move out here for the winter instead of doing all this traveling back and forth. We were really only on the snow out west when we were shooting. And in the early days, we'd get all set up for a shot and go do it and mess it up like 75% of the time. It would not often work out the way that we had drew it up. So it would take a long time out there to get what we needed. We're not riding hard all day. It's a lot of hurry up and wait, like get to a spot, let the camera guys set up. Somebody goes and does something, and then it's like, okay, on to the next spot. So I don't think we realized how big of an impact that moving out there would have on our riding at the time, but we knew it was important. Not only for the logistics and the safety and the amount of time that we were spending in the car, driving back and forth, but just for getting to know people better too, and being able to ride outside of shooting and become better athletes. So that was a big transition for us. Our first winter, we rented a house in Idaho Falls and brought all our stuff out there. I was super broke. I had spent all my money buying 2 brand new snowmobiles. This is model year 2018. So I got a new Skidoo and a new Articat, and just had a pretty awful year as far as parts go. Both those sleds blew up and blew motors. The Skidoo, I was able to get warranted. The Cat, I was not. And then all kinds of parts bills on top of that too, from stuff I was breaking. Just not being a very good rider in the beginning. You break a lot of stuff just trying to progress and trying to advance. So I was broke. I'm out here by myself, basically me and Dylan, out in Idaho in this new land, kind of cutting our teeth. And that was another sort of painful time. Like, we were having the time of our lives, but financially I was like, man, this is going to be difficult. I was bartending in the summer to make as much money as I could and save up as much money as I could to buy sleds, buy parts, buy food, fund this whole thing. Just living by myself and trying to do this sled bum lifestyle, basically, while focusing on the business and like making that our breakfast, lunch, and dinner every single day. Like, we had our eyes completely on the prize and not really doing anything else. And that's what it took to kind of turn the corner and get it to the next level, where we were starting to pick up a pretty serious following on social media, and the content was getting better and better. But this time we were still only filming like broadcast TV episodes. We'd go out there and we'd film for a few days to make a half-hour episode that would air on the Fox Sports channels here in the Midwest. And that's kind of when we decided that, hey, we can do a lot more of this. We're picking up tips and tricks from the professionals that we're working with that are shooting the show at the time. And we think we should like do a little behind the scenes stuff. So we started vlogging with GoPros and our cell phones. And we called it One of Those Days. So our goal is just to capture some of the shenanigans, some of the stuff that went wrong, all the parts we were breaking and this and that along the way. And they were super organic, obviously low budget productions, but people gravitated to that, and they became pretty popular. So that was kind of the next insight into where we should take things. It's like people, and I think you started to see this trend in all types of industries and all types of communities, and where we kind of went away from the high budget productions and real recognize real, like the more authentic you can be, the more you can show, the more you can make people feel like they're along for the ride. I think the more engaged your customer base is going to be. So that was kind of the first indication on the digital transition, as we were calling it, not going away, but just putting more of an emphasis on digital content over broadcast TV content. And that took us to where we are today. So we started doing more and more digital content. YouTube started growing more and more. We were getting, hundreds of thousands of views throughout the season. That's one thing I say too, is there was never like a big break. There was never a video that we had that got 5 million views and put us on the map. It's been brick by brick, slow build over the course of many years to get to where we're at, which I think is great. I think our audience, I would put our audience up against any other audience for that reason. Like, everybody is there for a reason. It's been built over the course of a long period of time, and they support us. They support a lot of what we do. So, that was kind of how we began to transition into the current model of how we make money today, which is, doing these digital videos, selling sponsorships and integrations out of them. And now you see just so many other creators I'm not saying we invented, YouTube videos, but we were some of the first to do it in snowmobiling, where you're going out and creating a piece of content and having a sponsor associated with that content and making some, driving revenue that way. We still do the broadcast TV series, and that's still a big part for our Midwest audience. But the digital has brought the brand worldwide.
And that digital, for the ignorant like me, that when you say that, so you help me understand the difference in the two, because I don't.
Yeah. So broadcast television is like over the airwaves, like your direct TV, your cable, your football games, your sports events, your local news, all that is over the air broadcast. So we were airing on broadcast TV stations here in the Midwest, the Fox Sports stations originally. Fox has now been bought out by Bally Sports. So we would have a half-hour slot on each of these, 8 networks. And that's when our show would air. And it's once a week, and we do a season, just like, lots of other television shows out there. But digital, being YouTube, or we had streaming apps for a while. We had a Boondock Nation Plus app that was available on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, Vizio TVs. Sky's the limit with that. You can put out as much content as you want, or as little content as you want. It can be of whatever length you want. You don't have to include ads if you don't want. You could include as many ads as you want, as far as like commercial breaks go. So it really eliminated a lot of the constraints, versus if you have a half-hour time slot on a network, and then 7.5, that's actually 28.5 minutes, because there's ads that you don't control in the beginning and the end. And then with the ads that we would have in the middle of the show, it came out to be about 21 minutes of content. So we have to hit that number like to the second for everything that you do. So that presents some constraints, right, with the story that you can tell, especially when you're shooting stuff like we are and there's just adversity everywhere and you're rolling with the punches. And like half the time the plan just goes completely out the window because of something crazy that happened or something that was unpredictable. So that's where I think with our sport, the age of YouTube and the rise of independent creators has really changed the game and can change the game for anyone. You don't have to know how to light a set and shoot 3 different camera angles and edit it all together in a concise timeline. You can just go be real and document what's going on. It's kind of documenting over creating, I guess, in our case, where we go out to these places with a plan. But a lot of times things come up along the way that are a heck of a lot more interesting than what we originally planned. And we're not going to just ignore those things to stay on script. We're going to talk about what's really happening here. And I think that's some of the most engaging stuff for our audience. So that has really changed the game for not only us, but I think a lot of other creators out there too.
Man, dude, there's so much. You might have to come on a second time. I was scrolling back and now I'm going to lose it because I had to scroll way back. So is one of those days, is that hashtag OOTD? Is that what that is that I just found scrolling back through the Boondock page?
Yes.
That's rad. I like to consider myself a pretty in the know on snowmobiling. I'd never heard of OOTD. So, dang, man. Well, I'm going to say it again. Kudos to you. It's just, I think what you've done is super special. And I think you guys paved the way for a lot. It's interesting. I guess we'll just talk about, I know there's some really exciting things coming, and we'll talk about that probably under lock and key because we can't blow the lid until it's too soon. But I'd love to talk about just how you see the industry. But I think you give yourself, you're humble, which is why you're such an effective leader. But arguably you guys paved the way, right? We got to give Dan Adams, Brant. Oh my gosh, if he hears this, he's going to be mad at me. Who's the other father of the sport? Don't tell me. He's in Utah now. Rasmussen, right?
Yeah.
Like they paved. I think they paved the first path, but I think you were the
professor.
The professor. Thank you, dude. Brett, don't be mad at me. It was a gap in time. But those guys, they really just went out and rode raw. And then I think you guys, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, like you paved the way for like digital creators and all the Kosturkis of the world, the Muskokas of the world. Like I view you guys as first. I know Dan had a big page, Brant had a big page, but it feels like you guys did it different. Is that, would you see it the same, or how would you see that?
Yeah. So let's talk about that a little bit. And for the listeners that aren't snowmobilers and aren't engaged in the community, backcountry snowmobiling is a relatively new sport. So we look back to like the 90s, and that's when you first started to see models like the Skidoo Summit, right? And some of these sleds that were geared more towards deep snow riding. But what they were was a trail sled with a little bit longer of a track. And these guys, like the ones you mentioned, were taking those sleds and doing things that nobody could imagine a snowmobile could do on them. And that was, I think that was like the first stage, right? And you started to see films come from this and people just hitting absolutely insane jumps. Still to this day, I look back at some of the stuff guys are doing on revs and on old iron, and it blows my mind because they're hitting as big of jumps as we are today on almost no suspension and old technology, right? So that was the first stage, but the distribution just wasn't there. Kind of what we were talking about with going from broadcast TV to digital. The only way that kind of riding and those clips was getting out there was through sled films. So you had like Sled Necks, right? And Turnagain Hardcore and the 509 films and Thunderstruck films and Boondockers films and stuff like that kind of coming to a rise in the mid to late 2000s. And that's what I grew up watching. So I'm watching these guys, hucking their meat, doing technical stuff on these old sleds. And it was just super inspiring for what could be done. Like as a dude growing up in the Midwest, we got hundreds of miles of trail around here, but you don't ride off trail. You get stuck off trail. Like, why would you go off the trail? People would ditch bang and stuff like that. That's how I ended up learning how to side hill. But that was all inspired by these films. So that was how guys would get sponsorships, is you were either featured in a film or you'd race. And if you were competitive in racing, hundreds of people come out to these events, they see you, people want to sponsor you because your brand is then on the side of this racer's sled and it's getting announced over the loudspeaker and stuff like that. But those were really like the two pathways to become a professional snowmobiler. Is you either had to be doing crazy enough shit to get noticed and featured in a film, or you had to be a racer and be at the top of the game. So when we launched our TV series, we thought it was going to be really cool that backcountry snowmobiling was going to be on TV. Aside from like X Games, there really wasn't snowmobiling on TV. And our sponsors recognized that too. It was a value proposition for them. We could give them advertising in the show cheaper than they could go buy it themselves on these networks, because we were buying a full half hour of airtime and then selling our own ads out of it. And I think in that sense, we did kind of carve our own path, and then we were some of the first to jump on this digital train. YouTube has really turned into quite the platform for independent creators. We started by posting our broadcast episodes there, but then started making content just curated for YouTube. And we started to see some pretty iconic edits, like Motor Fist out of Idaho Falls. They were one of our first sponsors. They had Taylor Fisk, who's a friend of ours, full-time just editor and content creator. Probably one of the first brands in the industry to do that. And he was going out with Jay Menaberry and Caleb Kosterky and Ross Robinson, all those names, right? Those guys were Motor Fist guys back in the day. And I feel like Fisk really put them on the map with some of the sick edits that he was doing. And for me, being a high schooler, like not having all this time on my hands, I was watching all those videos, and we were like watching all the films and stuff. And it became kind of a cultural movement in the community, I want to say. People, my friends and I, we would just really wait for these video drops and for these film releases and stuff like that. And we knew who these people were through these videos. So I think that was kind of the beginning of now what we see today, where it's like you got somebody like Caleb Kosterky, who's just got unbelievable skills, and he can go out and put that in front of hundreds of thousands of people in the matter of days. From when he shoots something to when it's released, it can be a very quick turnaround. And it engages people. People are able to follow along. They feel like they're a part of what he's doing. And he's done a really good job, leveraging that. You see it with his clinics, with the products that he sells, or that he's partnered with other companies to sell. There's a lot of dudes that rock the 509 gear that Caleb wears. They rock his handlebars. They rock Olin shocks. They've got the Caleb setup. And I think that's all been possible through the digital age, because, in the same breath, not everything has to be a film now either. You can do very esoteric content on, here's my handlebar setup, and this is why I make these adjustments and do this, and there's a group of people out there that is really intrigued by that and wants to watch it. Versus, 10, 15 years ago, you wouldn't take the time out of a film to talk about that. Like, I don't even know how you would get that information. So the information that's available out there, the way people are able to open up certain parts of their lifestyle and their, their whole setup and personality, I think that's really changed the game too, in terms of building community and keeping people engaged. So I think sky's the limit for all kinds of creators and all kinds of communities. I tell, when people are looking for advice, I say there's riches and niches, and if you've got something interesting that you do, there's going to be a group of people out there that's intrigued by it. And now we have the capacity to put our own content on the same platform as like the NFL. Now with YouTube TV, it's kind of blurring those lines between really professional content and independent content, and sky's the limit for anyone out there.
I think of this word like established, right? And like I think our sport arguably is not yet established. It's establishing, but I think there's a few like prominent moments where I don't know, it became legit. I'm just curious in your world, two things. Like when would you argue that, Boondock was an established a name in the sport? What was that like? I know you said there wasn't a breakthrough video and it was brick by brick, which I appreciate. I think is so important for particularly kids to hear. Is like it absolutely, I know this in all business that I've experienced. It doesn't happen overnight. And if it does happen overnight, it's fleeting, right? Like you got to build that foundation. But for you, like in the Boondock story, like started filming in 2014, you go through all that college stuff. Like you make the decision in 2018, you're going to come out West, which is epic. I rearranged my life right around the same time. I was like, dude, I'm not taking trips. Like I'm buying a house out here. Like this is too good. I can't. And man, I just wish everybody could experience it. We'll talk about that later. But what was the moment in time when Boondock to you, like, I know you're still evolving it and probably you ever will be evolving it. Got to do that with the times. But like the kind of proverbial made it moment, not that that's a thing, but like if you had to like when you and Dylan got to kind of not rest on your laurels, but say, we did something here. Like, is there a moment in time that kind of resonates with you as like the established moment for Boondock? And then I'd love to kind of draw that distinction in the backcountry sport as you see it too.
Yeah, that's a great question. And Dylan might have a different answer, but for me, I think it was one of our Heydays parties, like maybe the first Heydays party that we did. So for those that don't know, Heydays is the official kickoff to winter, they call it. It's the largest snowmobile event in the world. It goes down in North Branch, Minnesota at the beginning of September. And this is where the entire snowmobile community gets together. Anyone who's anyone is there. All the brands reveal their new stuff. The gear companies are there selling their new gear. The sled manufacturers are releasing their new race sled, and they've got all the next model year stuff on display, and making announcements and stuff like that. All the athletes are there doing autograph signings. There's drag racing. Grass drags is how it all started. Now that event has really blown up in the digital age as well. But when we first, so we went to Heydays and we were like, for our first year, we were in the back 40. Like we were not on any like gravel aisle. We were just like back by the drags, kind of up against the fence, not much traffic. And we're like, okay, obviously this event is huge and it's got potential, but we're not seeing it out here. So we need to step up, and we decided to sponsor Heydays. So I think it was like $6,500 to do it at the time. And there was only like 6 sponsors, including us, of the whole event. So we got nice treatment then. We got to kind of pick our spot. And one thing we negotiated into our deal was that we'd get to throw a party. So the origins of this are kind of funny too, because the first year we went, Fox was hosting a party, and we kind of got snubbed out of it. We were trying to go with our friend Zach Herfindahl, who's a Fox athlete, and they let him in, but turned us around at the gate. So we're like, okay, all right, well, we want to throw our own party. So we sponsored Heydays, put this in our deal that we'd get to throw an event. And we did. And we were like, we're going to let everybody in. Like that's the nation part of Boondock Nation. Like if you're in the industry, you can come in. So it quickly became very popular. And next thing we knew, like we were running out of beer and taking beer from the Fox party, because like the Snow Barons were the people who put on the event were taking beer from the Fox party because we were running out of beer. And, Sea Boys were there, Barant was there, Carl Kuster was there, like all these big names, Jay and Blaine. And we're like, oh my gosh, all these guys are in our booth and we're all getting rowdy and having a good time, and I think that's really, that was like the we've made it moment, because then a lot of people knew us from that. And then the next year, it became even bigger because word got out that we were the spot to party.
Dang. So what year is that when you guys sponsored it? That's probably, it doesn't sound like much, but 6,500 at that point, I'm assuming was a big move.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. No, I think that was 2018.
So 2018 is kind of the breakthrough. And for the listener, that's not like it. The heydays we could equate to somewhat of like our version of the Sundance Film Festival, right? Like that's where everybody's there. It's just a bit, right? Like,
yeah,
arguably,
yeah, some kind of blend between that and Sturgis. It's massive, and it's a huge draw, not only for the brands and the companies, but also the individuals. There's swappers that come, and there's 40 acres of swap, and people camp, people party. Now there's so much going on there. I mean, there's mud bogs, there's freestyle, there's side-by-side racing. You could probably buy a boat there for all I know. I mean, it's really blown up into just a general power sports event, obviously focused around snowmobiling. But now there's I said there was 6 sponsors when we first started sponsoring Heydays. Now there's 60. So they've really taken it to the moon, and the event's grown a lot. There's a lot of infrastructure there now. But I think that's one thing that put us on the map within the community as well. We do food and beer for everybody, and everybody would come and have a good time, and it just became a yearly tradition. And last year I think was the biggest party yet.
Yeah. And and you guys are still putting on the Out West. You've got a few events now. So how would you define, this is what's interesting, because I know you've suggested that you're going to do this at the next level, but I already consider you somewhat of a barstool equivalent insofar as to describe it to somebody. Like, how would you describe, let's just talk to somebody that doesn't know snowmobiling, or maybe they know some about snowmobiling, but Boondock Nation is a what, right? Like my fence company is a fence installation company. Very easy to explain, but Boondock Nation, how does the founder and whatever you call yourself, CEO, whatever, it's you and Dylan, but how do you describe Boondock to somebody as a business? It is a what business?
A snowmobile media company is what I would say.
Snowmobile media company.
Yeah. I say that because, we do a lot of content focused around me and Dylan. But we do a lot of stuff behind the scenes too, working with and for other brands to capture content for them. It's a marketing machine, you could say too. We generate eyeballs and we sell those eyeballs, to be frank. So when we have a video or a video idea, we'll line up a sponsor for that. If we have a brand partnership, like take our partnership with Trails West Trailers, for example. Trails West offers some of the best trailers in the game, and we have a Boondock Nation edition Trails West trailer. So they have the Brandt edition, the Chris Brandt Backcountry edition, and then the Boondock Nation edition. And with that partnership, they kind of put it in our hands to market the product and to get it out there and to promote it. And they would co-brand a trailer with us to kind of elevate the status of our brand, help put us on the map. And we sell, anywhere from 50 to 100 of those trailers a year at like $70,000 a pop, which is pretty cool. So that's another look into how we generate revenue and how we've positioned ourselves in the industry. But then we'll also do just like turnkey social media content creation. We haven't stepped into the management side of things where we're running other people's pages for them. I think there's a lot of opportunity for that for anyone in any industry. But right now we've been finding some success in helping these other companies that want to have a global presence, a big presence in all kinds of geographies to get the content that they need. A lot of these business owners are looking down the road at the next 5-10 years and realize they need to have a social media presence every day or every week for the next 5-10 years. And a lot of people don't want anything to do with it. They're sick of it. They don't know how to create the content themselves, or it takes them a lot of effort and a lot of resources to do so. And with our travel, we're in a lot of these places already, shooting for our show and shooting our content. It doesn't take much more effort for us to shoot a little bit more of purpose purposely shot stuff for those people. So take like Arctic FX, for example. If they were to send somebody out to go shoot all of their athletes in all these different locations, they'd spend tens of thousands of dollars just to send somebody around to shoot all these people. And that person has to be able to ride a snowmobile and get to the places that these athletes can get to get the shot. We, however, ride with a lot of these people as it is. And if we just dedicate some extra content to Arctic FX and package that up nicely for them and provide it to them, it kind of kills two birds with one stone, and we can do it pretty cost effectively. So that's one example. That's something that I think there's a lot of potential for anyone in any industry, like I said, to do. And when people are asking, how can I get started? How can I get sponsors? I don't have a big following. I only have 500 followers, but I want to start building these relationships. I say, get the content in their hands. If you're using a company's product and you can get some visually appealing content for them, it's one thing to post on your page, but if you can get that in their hands and they want to use it on their page and it does well and it gets a lot of likes and it gets some engagement, they're going to want more of that. And then you can start bartering for product, or you could say, get me the newest stuff and I'll get you shots, I'll get you some content on this. And then you can start, doing it on a more regular basis and getting some cash deals, even without the following. And then that helps build your following too, because if they're posting your stuff, especially if they're tagging you, then people are going to check out your page. So I think there's some relationships that can be built that way for people who don't have, 100,000 followers, but still want to build relationships with brands. That would be my piece of advice, is like, make the best content you can and get some of it in their hands too, because once they start using it, once they start seeing success with it, it's like a drug. They just want more. And a lot of these companies are going to have to make posts, to keep a presence on social media every day or a couple times a week it's not going away. Right. So that's something to keep in mind. I think for anyone that's trying to make some extra money or make a living doing what they love.
Yeah. Well, I just want to take a deliberate and impactful pause. Like, dude, can we just talk? Can you just for a minute, like 12-year-old Jack, be 12-year-old Jack? Like, how cool is it that Boondock Nation has a Trails West trailer? Like, you got to take a minute and be proud of that. No?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. No, if you told like 12, 14-year-old me what we've been up to over the past couple of years and what we would get up to, like, I wouldn't believe it at all. I'm looking at this picture over here in my office of me, like, first learning how to carve my Rev, my 06 Renegade, and dumping it over on its side. And it's like, I remember just loving snowmobiling so much without even knowing, what could possibly come of it, or that anyone would know me for my riding in the future. And if you told me what we've been up to over the past few years back then, I probably would have had a stroke. I don't even know.
Like ultimate stoke stroke though. Yeah. Like,
oh, exactly.
You're living your dream, right? You're living your boyhood dream. No,
literally.
Yeah. And I just want to say it again. I said it in the beginning, but like, you figured out, like, you really did. You figured out how to like ride a snowmobile and make money doing it. Like, I just think I don't know, man. There's just something euphoric about it. So, my hat's off to you, man. I think it's really cool.
Thanks. Yeah, I would say though, timing is everything. We definitely got in at the right time. The digital age, the social media age, the way things have changed, and the way that it's empowered individual creators and independent media. And also the way that snowmobiles have changed and developed. Like how I mentioned earlier that mountain sleds used to just be trail sleds with longer tracks. And now we've got purpose-built mountain sleds. I can only imagine what Dan Adams and Barant and those guys would have been doing if they were 27 years old on the sleds that we have today. They were doing it at that age on really old iron that wasn't nearly as capable. So I think both of those things had just created the perfect storm, and really the right opportunity for us to get in at the time we did. And we were on the leading edge of it, I would say. in terms of our niche and our style of doing things. But yeah, it wasn't, I mean, it also took the commitment too. We didn't dance around this. We dove in head first, and all those things combined got us to where we are today.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to let you skip out on the second question. And I think the problem is we only got like 50 minutes left. And I want to dive in with you on what's coming next and kind of do some business planning. Cause I think there's a lot left for sledding, in my opinion. I think like anybody that hasn't gone and seen the top of a mountain on a sled is just missing something. And it's interesting that you went to school for sledding. I went to school for snowboarding. I just had to be in the mountains. And I found this version of snow. I grew up racing snowcross, and then like, dude, I went right in the mountains. I can't sit on a chairlift anymore. Like it is it's so unexciting relative to what we get to do. But like, I guess just really quick, kind of where you see the industry today as for your followers and for those that might listen that have no idea what we're talking about with this, I think, arguably the best sport known to man, backcountry snowmobiling. Like, how do you see it? And maybe just a quick, when did it get established, or when is it like formally a thing? Just really quick, we'll hit that. And then I'm going to ask you, we'll do a longer episode because I want to talk about all the brands and all the, how disconnected. And like, I think we've got a lot of opportunity to kind of like clean up our sport. I don't want to say it that way, but like make it accessible and make it prominent and make sure it exists into the future. Like all of our manufacturers are struggling, right? There's a bunch of the best brands are being consolidated. Like it's kind of, there's a degradation happening as it's moving forward. But just like, instead of going into all that, which we could probably yak it up for another 2 hours, just kind of like where you see the sport today, how you see the sport having been air quotes established. And then we'll launch into the protected content here in a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. I agree. We could spend all day just chopping it up about where the like industry is and what can be done about the OEMs and all kinds of stuff, that's contributed to the little dip that we've seen in the snowmobile market, so to speak, over the last couple of years. But I think it's exciting times. I've got a lot of hope for the snowmobile community. I think the digital age has brought more people together than ever, and I've seen that firsthand through Boondock Nation. Like I've made so many friends and aligned with so many people, just like you and me. What we're doing right now through snowmobiling, and there's so many people that are so passionate about it. Like that's undeniable. A couple of the issues that we face are like the cost of entry, like the barrier to entry is pretty high for somebody who's like didn't grow up doing it, doesn't know where to start. It's like a new sled's $20-some thousand, right? Like that's tough. And quality, and used sleds, that's tough too, because you could get lucky and get a great used sled that will last for years and years, or you could get a total lemon, that's been beat up, and you don't know how to fix it, you don't know how to wrench on it. But at the same time, that's kind of everyone's story too throughout snowmobiling. It's like I remember just working on my old junk and fixing stuff and not knowing how to do it. But now there's YouTube, and there's a lot of information out there on how to maintain and fix stuff. So I think, it takes a certain kind of person to be a snowmobiler. You got to be able to get down and dirty. You got to be able to deal with adversity when something breaks out on the mountain, or when you run into unforeseen circumstances. But like you said, I want more and more people to be able to stand on top of a mountain and see what we see and feel that sense of accomplishment from getting there. Like there really is nothing like it. And that's one thing I absolutely love, is being able to take first timers out in the mountains and show them a bit of what we do. Is the amazement that I see in them. It gives me new life almost. I ride 50, 60, 70 days a year, and it becomes a little routine at times. I know exactly what I'm doing when I'm putting all my gear on and where we're going. And it's just gotten to an even higher level of like what it takes for me to be satisfied with a day of riding. But you put somebody who's never been on a sled before, or never been on a mountain sled before, on a machine and get them into some of the stuff that we do, that even stuff we just like ride right past, and they are having the time of their lives. And that is just like so refreshing. So I want to be able to share that experience with tons of people and introduce tons of people to the sport. I think, again, like the digital world that we live in is offering that and exposing more and more people to the sport. I think it's pretty interesting when you see like the rise of F1 racing with that Netflix series that's been out, that like docu-series that has really peeled back the layers there and shown you a peek behind the curtain of what goes on in the world of F1 racing. I think that could be modeled in our community because there is so much that goes into it, like especially with racing, in the different disciplines of racing, whether it be hill climb racing or ice oval racing or snowcross racing. Like those guys are so dedicated. They spend hours and hours and hours of practice and wrenching and tuning just for their one shot, whether it be hill climb or ice oval or any other discipline of racing. And the fact that a lot of guys make a living doing that too is so cool. The competition is so fierce. But for me, like free riding, that's the ultimate freedom too. It's like, to contrast the racing side of it a little bit, there's no competition really. The only competition is between you and the mountain. I relate it to golf sometimes in that way. It's like on the golf course, it's you versus the course. Out on the mountain, it's you versus the mountain. Like, you can't cheat yourself. You're out there to progress and try and get better and try and like land that re-entry or hop over or whatever you're trying to do, trying to jump bigger. And there's a ton of satisfaction in that. And I think that can really be applied to a lot of other areas in life too. So I think the sport's got a ton of potential there, just with individuals chasing their own goals and feeling that freedom that can't be replicated anywhere else, in my opinion. We're able to see some of the coolest things that Mother Nature has to offer that you wouldn't be able to see other than if you were in a helicopter, right? Like some of the areas we go to have just never been accessed by humans. Maybe on a dirt bike in the summer, maybe. Otherwise, it'd take you a week of walking to get there, right? And even then, we're able to cover so much ground in the matter of a day. It's just truly unbelievable. So all that being said, I think it's exciting times for the industry because of the ability for independent creators to get their stuff out there and to share what they're doing. Everybody's got a different story. Everybody's got a different program, so to speak, with what they do with a day of snowmobiling or throughout a season of snowmobiling. But we all share the same love. We squeeze the same throttle. We love at the heart of it the same thing. So I'm stoked. I think if we can figure out a way to introduce more people to the sport, make it more accessible for more people, and continue to share what we're doing, like sky's the limit for snowmobiling.
Heard. I want to go into so much more depth. Like we didn't even talk about the athleticism to it. Like everybody just thinks you kind of like go snowmobile and pull a throttle and like sit back. It's just like anything but. But so as we index, I just want to say thanks for coming on. This will be fun. If you don't mind, I'm probably we'll do a couple of these as we kind of iterate. But I think my ultimate goal is we got to get the Deegans. We got to get the motocross fam to see the snowmobile world. That's like my little pet project. But anything you want to say to your audience before we kind of kick over into the sacred land of what's next for Long Track Jack, Boondock, and the rest of the sport? Any closing remarks for you?
Well, I really appreciate the support that I've felt and that we've felt from the whole community, along this journey. That's one thing that kind of underscores this entire thing is like, never was the door slammed in our face. I shouldn't say never, but like rarely ever was the door slammed in our face. Like people were always willing to hear us out, hear our ideas. They're always stoked for what we were trying to do. I don't know. Half of them probably thought it wasn't going to work, but still were willing to help open doors for us and, introduce us to people anyway. And we wouldn't be here without that. So that's one thing that I think that is just indicative of who makes up this community. People are excited to see other people succeed. There's very little jealousy. There's very little salt or drama. at least from what I've seen, because everyone values this sport and recognizes a lot of what we just talked about, where like united we ride, divided we fail. In this industry, you know, like our public land access is threatened by the environmentalist types in a lot of cases. That threatens this sport seriously. Avalanche safety, which I know is something that's very important to you and I for so many reasons. You know, that's something that we all have done a really good job of coming together on, I think, and the whole culture has changed around avalanche education and the progression there. So that's one thing that I'm forever grateful for, and that I credit to getting us to this point is like the way the community has embraced us and our ideas, and always lended a helping hand to get us to where we are today. Not sure if that's the same for a lot of other industries. You know, I kind of doubt it, but that's one thing that I think is super unique about the snowmobile community, and that I'm super grateful for.
Yeah, it's a powerful tribe. I always say that, man. It's kind of crazy. Like you see the world at odds with each other, and like anybody you meet snowmobiling, like it's just like there's just a shared ethos. Aside from Skidoo and Polaris, right? Other than that, it's like everybody just wants the same thing.